The Halloween series is one of the most celebrated horror series of all time. Yet it's also one of the most bipolar, in the sense that some of the films are excellent and some are lackluster. But it all began with the simple premise of the shape of evil. Michael Myers, the sinister babysitter murderer that stalks you and waits for just the right moment to pounce. It's an iconic premise, and it's lasted even until this day, with sequels still in the works. So today, on OverReview, we talk about Michael Myers, the history of Haddonfield, and the classic story of Halloween. Happy Halloween! Thank you so much for joining me on the night he came home. Today, on my series OverReview, which is an overview and review of an entire horror franchise, we are taking a look at the ever so iconic Halloween series, which, as I mentioned in the opener, is a series that's, in my opinion, bipolar, where some of the films are excellent, and some of them are, well, just straight up bad. Now, to explain, the Halloween series, like the Nightmare on Elm Street series, started with its best film. The originals of those series are considered icons, masterpieces, if you will, of the horror genre. Whereas if you look at a series like, I don't know, Leprechaun, or even Friday the 13th, the original film isn't that highly praised, so the sequels are open to interpretation and varying levels of quality. But with Halloween, the stakes and the bars were set so high in the original that it's hard to beat. So it's understandable that a lot of the series tries to go in different directions to some varying levels of success. But it all centers around, well, except for Halloween 3, it all centers around Michael Myers, the masked serial killer that killed his sister when he was a child and was sent away to a correctional facility only to come back to Haddonfield, his hometown, to wreak havoc and bring death and murder. Of course, then you introduce the infamous Dr. Loomis, played wonderfully, magnificently by Donald Pleasance. Throw in Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, and you have easily one of the best horror films of all time. Now, I think the reason that the 1978 Halloween works so well is because of its use of suspense, tension, letting us sit in the environment of Haddonfield for a while. It's atmospheric. There's the fall leaves that were brought in by garbage bags in Pasadena, California, to make it look like a small, quaint town in Illinois. It works so well. The film was shot on a budget for around $300,000, which, if you know anything about filmmaking, is basically nothing, even for that time. Yet, this is one of the most profitable films of all time. And it's kind of set the bar for horror films to come, especially slashers. This film basically is a template for slasher movies, even though I don't really think it is one. It is a slasher film, but it's not about the body count. It's about the suspense and the evil of Michael Myers, and taking this one havoc and placing him in a quaint town and just seeing all the carnage and all the chaos that comes out of that. Of course, you have Dr. Loomis delivering speeches of how Michael Myers is pure evil, he has the devil's eyes, yada yada yada, I shot him 6 times. But at its simplest, Halloween is the story of evil and good. And I think that's why it's so prevalent even today. It's a period piece, it's a slasher film, it's suspenseful. Unfortunately, it has this high pedestal, consideration for being one of the greatest horror films of all time that I think a lot of modern audiences don't get the point. I work at a movie theater, and we had a screening of Halloween for the Halloween season, and I realized that younger couples coming out of the theater didn't appreciate it as much as, say, a veteran horror fan or someone who saw it when it came out originally. And that's unfortunate. Perhaps we're too desensitized to violence to consider the violence in Halloween edgy or scary anymore. But the reason that Michael Myers in The Shape works so well is that there's no reason, one, for him to be evil, and two, the camera work, the sound, the suspense, all leading up to every time he kills. It's not over-the-top gory as some of the sequels will get, and we'll talk about those momentarily. But it's such a simple premise about evil in this quaint little town that just works so well. And I think it's charming. Easily one of the most atmospheric films I've ever seen. And it also is accompanied so well by John Carpenter's haunting score, which is easily the best soundtrack of all time, in my opinion. It fits the movie so well. You can't have Halloween without the iconic score that John Carpenter recorded like in a day or something like that, in a couple of hours. It's amazing. It's a classic case of filmmakers who knew what they were doing. John Carpenter and Deborah Hill came up with the story. It was originally just going to be I can't even talk. It was originally going to be called The Babysitter Murderers. It was originally going to be called The Babysitter Murders. Mustafa Akkad, the producer, wanted to make a movie about babysitters being stalked and killed, and Deborah Hill and John Carpenter were like, what if we set it on Halloween? And it was just a match made in heaven. Of course, you know the infamous story about the mask. It was a William Shatner Captain Kirk mask that they, teased the hair out, spray painted it white, and voila. Movie magic. It's incredible what they did on such a low budget with so minimal resourcing that I think it just comes down to right moment at the right time with the right people. Halloween is a classic, and I'm not going to talk anymore about it because what more is there to say about Halloween? I've said what I could, and people have praised the movie forever. But now we can move on to the sequels, because everybody knows that the original Halloween is an iconic film. But it's the sequels that get poked fun at a lot. And I do some of the poking, I will say, because some of these movies are hot garbage. Halloween Resurrection. And yeah, you can rage comment at me in the comments. I don't care. That's fine with me. Moving on to Halloween 2, which came out only a few short years after the original, and has a very similar vibe to the original too. A lot of that is to do with the score, yet again, by John Carpenter and Alan Howarth. I hope I'm saying his name correctly, because he's a wonderful, genius composer that's worked with John Carpenter on other films that he's done. But it's this more organ-based theme, I guess you could call it, and it gives it some oomph going into this sequel. It takes place right after the original Halloween. Laurie Strode is, of course, brought to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, and Michael Myers goes after her. Now, the thing about Halloween 2, and I want to say I saw Halloween 2 before the original, believe it or not. It was playing on TV, and I think that's where I saw it. And I like it. It's easily the best sequel to Halloween. But the thing about Halloween 2 is that it plays much more as your standard slasher film than anything else. And John Carpenter admits to this. After Halloween and its immense success, there were so many copycats like Friday the 13th that John Carpenter felt that they needed to boost the body count and the gore to adapt to the audience that was expecting Michael Myers to be this bloodthirsty monster. And you can definitely tell they hone in on the gore. The first movie kind of had some sexual stuff in it, but it wasn't honed in on. This movie kind of goes out of its way to show the raunchiness of the slasher tropes. It's still a good movie. It still has the same suspense. It has the same beats. still talks about the backstory of Michael Myers. And in this film, of course, we understand that Laurie Strode is actually his sister, which is a plot line that kind of wiggles around in the series. And in 2018, of course, they dropped that. They cut that out. But nevertheless, Halloween 2 is a good movie. I enjoy it quite a bit. But it does make Michael Myers this paranormal, otherworldly guy, whereas in the first one, he's mysterious, and at the end, when you look over the balcony with Dr. Loomis and Michael's gone, you're left scratching your head wondering what happened to him. And in this movie, it's very clear that he's some sort of supernatural being, because he gets shot in the eyes, and he's okay. So clearly, they knew where they were going, but oddly enough, they kill him off in this movie. They kill off both him and Dr. Loomis. They're set ablaze on fire in the hospital, and Halloween's over. Which leads us in to Halloween 3, which is easily the most controversial of this series, I would say, because some people downright hate this movie, and for the longest time it had a terrible reputation, but there is a growing cult following that loves Halloween 3. And I have to say, I am in that group. Halloween 3 is one of my favorites in the Halloween series. And the reason is, it's just so different. Had this movie been called John Carpenter's Season of the Witch and gone on with a lot of his other legacy, like The Fog and They Live and Christine, I think people would appreciate it a whole lot more. But it was the fact that they cut out Michael Myers and did their own thing that spited fans, perhaps, and caused some tension there, I would assume. So the plan was, after Halloween 2, they wanted to start a Halloween-themed horror anthology series where each film is about a different aspect of Halloween. So Halloween 1 and 2 were kind of the serial killer, storyline. Halloween 3 would be about witches, and then maybe they'd do ghosts or aliens or something like that. I think it's an awesome idea, but clearly it only lasted one film. But Halloween 3 is about a mask company called Silver Shamrock, and they make these little cute Halloween masks that are actually made by, witches that want to sacrifice children. They put a little chip in the back of the mask, and when a commercial activates the mask, it proceeds to kill the kid in a gruesome, horrifying way. And of course, a man along with this girl that they meet and suddenly get a little hot and steamy, they have to stop the Silver Shamrock Company. And it's such a movie drenched in the Halloween atmosphere that I love it. Also, has a really good soundtrack, again, by Howarth, however you pronounce it, and Carpenter. And it was directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, who was a part of the original Halloween. So it's cool to see that family stick around for the sequels. But Halloween 3 is kind of where it ends for John Carpenter and Deborah Hill in the series. Because other than the score being influenced by John Carpenter, they really don't come back much. I guess maybe more recently they do the scoring for the Halloween 2018 Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends thing that we'll get to. But Halloween 3 is about it. I really like Halloween 3. I think if you haven't seen it because you want to see Michael Myers, give it a watch. I think it deserves more praise. It easily is one of the most bizarre horror films of the 80s, and I appreciate it for that. I give Halloween an applause for going beyond the premise of the killer in the mask. Unfortunately for Halloween 3, it got terrible reviews. People didn't like it. People wanted Michael Myers. And of course, then, only a few short years later, we got Halloween 4. The Return of Michael Myers, which proudly puts Michael Myers right in the title so everybody knows he is back. The shape has returned. Halloween 4 is probably the best sequel that does not have John Carpenter's involvement. I like this movie a lot. Halloween 4 and 5 are, and I guess really 6 gets into it the deepest. Halloween's 4, 5, and 6 are considered the Thorn trilogy, which means that there's this weird subplot where Michael Myers is actually a part of a cult that requires him to sacrifice people and murder, and that's why he does all the killing. It's a really stupid idea. I guess they wanted to go with something different, but the whole mystery that was set up in Halloween and kind of ruined, they start to get into the origins of him more in Halloween 2, but the mystery of the shape of Michael Myers, of his evil, is what makes him so iconic. And when you strip that away, you just have a guy in a mask. Thankfully, Halloween 4 is still a really fun movie, starring Danielle Harris in her first role as Jamie Lloyd, who is Laurie Strode's daughter. And after Laurie Strode dies, she becomes the new protagonist to Michael Myers' antagonist. He wants to kill her because she is now the last in his family line. And that kind of is explained by the whole Thorn curse and everything like that. But you take that away, Halloween 4 is a lot of fun. It has a lot of great Halloween imagery. I think the score is pretty good. Despite people's grievances, I actually like the mask. There's a really great sequence at the end involving Michael Myers getting on a truck. Basically what happens is they send out an alert saying Michael Myers, escaped from the mental institution, and all of these redneck hillbillies are like, we're gonna go kill Michael Myers, and they all get their shotguns and stuff, and Michael Myers gets on this truck of all of them and kills them in gruesome ways. It's a roller coaster of a film. I really enjoy it. Unfortunately, though, it brings the characters and the development of the Thorn trilogy into Halloween 5. Now, Halloween 4 actually ends in a pretty interesting way. Dr. Loomis discovers that Jamie, Laurie Strode's daughter, has tendencies like Michael Myers, and at the end finds her adorned in Michael Myers' little clown costume from the first film. Nice little nod there, Halloween 4. And he starts screaming, no, 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 and it ends. Good cliffhanger. Halloween 5 goes wacko, I think, and has Jamie be telepathic with Michael Myers because it's her uncle, and she is mute throughout basically the entire movie and talks to Michael through her mind, and then the rest of it's just like a generic slasher. I don't know what that's about. Again, this goes into the whole Thorn thing and the more supernatural element that they started introducing in these movies. But Halloween 5, other than that wacky premise, is very forgetful. There's a few kills I remember. There's a scene where Michael Myers goes into a barn and has a pitchfork and stabs this couple. But other than a few things, I also like the mask he has. There's not a lot going for Halloween 5. Unfortunately, The Revenge of Michael Myers, there's not a lot going here, sadly. There's one sequence that I think is pretty entertaining, and that's when Dr. Loomis beats the crap out of Michael Myers with a 2x4 and just starts screaming, die, die, because I think, frankly, he's had enough of this guy. He's come back 4 times, so it's about time. But, is it the worst of the series? No. But it's clearly not the best. It's watchable. It's a watchable movie. It's been some time since I've seen it, but yeah, that's essentially Halloween 5, is a yeah. And I guess the same could kind of be said for Halloween 6. Now, Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, is interesting because I've heard some fans in the Halloween community, if we call, the lovers of a franchise a community, then sure, it's a Halloween community. Some people really like this movie, and some people call it out as being not that great. I can see what they mean in terms of the production quality, definitely improved, but it's still... It gets too weird with the Thorn stuff. It is too far gone from what made Halloween work. Interesting enough, though, it has Paul Rudd in it, who plays Tommy Doyle from the original Halloween, all grown up. and he meets with Dr. Loomis, and they talk, and basically similar events transpire where Michael Myers comes back to get Tommy because, you know, he's got to kill people. That's kind of how these movies go. And then at the end, you get introduced to the Cult of Thorn, where they're going to sacrifice Jamie Lloyd's daughter. So that's Laurie Strode's granddaughter, I guess. I think that's how the movie goes. And, you know, of course, Paul Rudd is to swoop in and stop Michael Myers and the Thorn cult. And Dr. Loomis, of course, is involved, and there's a little twist where one of the leaders of the cult is actually one of the guys from the medical center from the original Halloween that you probably wouldn't even recognize anyways. I don't even recall his name. But it's really odd. I guess it's not a terrible movie, but to me, it's too far gone from what Halloween should be, and it needs to get back to its roots. Unfortunately, this was the last film that Donald Pleasance would be in. He passed just after the making of Halloween 6, which is unfortunate because I think he was perhaps the best part of the entire series, and with his loss, you can definitely feel it. Thankfully, though, I will say, after Halloween 6, we get an upgrade with Halloween H2O. Which Halloween H2O is one of my favorites in the series, and it goes for a lot of fans too. Because it's just so different. They scrap all the Thorn stuff. They get back more simplistic, but this movie is like if the original Halloween was met with Scream. Because Halloween H2O, which is 20 years later, if you couldn't catch on, came out 20 years after the original Halloween in 1998, the year I was born, go figure, yay, and brings back Jamie Lee Curtis. They're trying to get all of their, stuff, all their ducks in a row to make this movie work. Brings back Jamie Lee, her son goes to this academy where she lives, and she's trying to protect him from Michael Myers, and Michael Myers comes back to haunt her. And a lot of this movie is kind of ripped off in the 2018 film. They use some aspects of this, of course, Jamie Lee being the femme hero, the woman hero who has to take down Michael Myers. It's a good idea. And she has kind of some PTSD from her childhood experiences, or childhood, I say that lightly because she was 20 years old in the original. But nevertheless, Jamie Lee, Laurie, has to stop Michael Myers yet again at this military academy. She tries to fall in love, but of course Michael Myers is there to stop her. It's a good movie. It is very reminiscent of Scream. In fact, I believe Kevin Williamson, the guy who wrote the Scream films, apart from Scream 3, was heavily involved in the making of Halloween H2O, and you can definitely see that. And I think the Halloween series needed some fresh life in it, kind of to resuscitate it, and Halloween H2O just works. Looking back on it, there are some dated aspects of it. There's also some really crappy CGI in this movie. They CGI'd Michael's mask in one of the shots. I have no idea why. It's hilarious, though, and you can appreciate it as I do, but Halloween H2O, a good movie. And it ends in a really great way. It kind of ties everything together. Michael Myers is in the back of an ambulance. Laurie steals the ambulance, drives it out into the middle of nowhere, and, spoiler alert, this whole video has been spoilers at this point, chops off Michael Myers' head. Halloween theme plays. The end. Until Halloween Resurrection, where they retcon that, and it was actually one of the ambulance drivers or something who was actually mute because Michael crushed his vocal cords. Why didn't he just take off the mask? His hands were outstretched. Just take off the mask, dude. We're going to talk about Halloween Resurrection now, which is the worst Halloween film, by the way. It's definitely the worst, and you can disagree with me, and you're wrong. I'm just kidding. But Halloween Resurrection starts with Laurie Strode in a mental hospital, Michael Myers breaking into said hospital, and Michael Myers murdering her in the opening scene. And then the rest of the film, get this, features Busta Rhymes. I can't even take this seriously. Busta Rhymes and a group of teens that go to the original Myers house in search of, I don't know what, they set up hidden cameras. It's like a TV reality show, like a web show, because that was popular when this movie was made in the early 2000s. And Busta Rhymes ninja kicks Michael Myers through a window in this movie. Halloween Resurrection is fascinating to me. It's almost so funny to me that it's amazing. And to be honest, let me be just straight up serious with you. The idea of a camera show going to the original Myers house is not a terrible idea. It's not reminiscent of the Halloween series at all. I don't know where this came from. Perhaps it's that early 2000s mentality of technological horror, like with The Ring and all that, you know. But it's not terrible. I assume there's some Blair Witch influence in here with the hidden camera stuff and the found footage, really. That's not really. But why is it in a Halloween movie, and why is it this bad? And why is Busta Rhymes in this movie? And why? There's like so many questions that I have for Halloween Resurrection. I recommend watching it because it's just so funny to me. But clearly, and you can tell, it's the weakest of the series. And after this, of course, they wanted to reboot the franchise because the 2000s were full of horror reboots. Black Christmas and My Bloody Valentine and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. So Halloween was clearly going to get a remake of some sort. And they turned to Rob Zombie, who made the two Rob Zombie Halloween films. Though technically those aren't in the classic canon of Halloween films. It's a remake, so I will just briefly mention that Rob Zombie made those. I won't really get into those because I'll save that for a different video. But they're completely different in tone than the original Halloween series. They retcon everything because it's completely different. Michael Myers talks and has a backstory, and he's bullied and all this stuff. Yeah, and there's a unicorn, and that's Halloween by Rob Zombie. But that leads us to Halloween 2018 and where we are currently in the series. So Halloween 2018 was a fantastic film. When I first saw it, and there's a review on my channel of it, I didn't really care for it. It basically came down to pacing for me because I liked the slow, drawn-out, atmospheric stuff that's always been in the Halloween series. But looking back on it, I was wrong. It is a good movie. It's a really well-done movie. One of the best-looking Halloween sequels, and it's one of the first of the Halloween movies that makes Michael Myers scary. He's actually scary in this movie. He's intense. There's some really good shots throughout the movie. Again, a lot of it's like Halloween H2O, where Laurie Strode and Michael Myers kind of come head-to-head, but you realize Michael is just a force of nature. He never was after anybody. He's not even after Laurie in this movie, really. It's just kind of a coincidence that they happen to meet. And I think that's why I like this movie so much. You also have John Carpenter reprising the music, and it's just really well done. It's a really well done score, really well done movie, and unfortunately, even though we were supposed to get the new Halloween Kills this year, and Halloween ends in 2021, obviously due to the virus, everything's been pushed back. But I still have high hopes because I'm so excited to see where this series goes. As you've seen in this video, this series is very all over the place. Different people have different opinions. Some people think that the new incarnation is the best with Halloween 2018. Some people like the Rob Zombie movies. Some people actually like the Halloween Thorn trilogy continuity. Some people hate Halloween 3. It's a mixed bag in terms of viewership. But in my opinion, Halloween's 1, 2, and 3 are the best. Halloween 2018 is a fantastic film. Halloween 4 is a really fun movie. And Halloween H2O is a blast. Outside of that, I really could understand watching them for completion's sake around Halloween time, but they're definitely not the best films you could watch for Halloween. But with that said, though, I think this series in particular strikes at horror fans' hearts because it's a series that is always drenched in the Halloween atmosphere. Every time you watch any of these movies, I mean, there's minor exceptions here and there, but on the whole, you get put into that October vibe, and it's clearly the reason that people come back again and again to the series. It's playing all the time on TV around Halloween. It's a series that I love to watch around this time of year, and it all started with such a simple premise, and I think that's why it works, and I think that's why this series is going to have a really hard time ending, because people gravitate to that simple story of evil and of Michael Myers. So in the comments below, what do you think about Halloween? The movies, the series, the future of the series, Michael Myers, even Halloween 3 and the Silver Shamrock stuff. I don't care. Let me know in the comments below. And everybody, happy Halloween. I'll see you in the next video, because Halloween never ends on Hauntformer. Remember, for all things Halloween, this is Hauntformer.